Welcome to the Folklorama at Home, the virtual experience brought to you by the Manitoba Government Stay at Home program. My name is Tanya and I'll be your travel guide as we check out cultures from around the world, including those in our very own backyard. Tonight, feel free if you have questions for us, chat with us in the below. Otherwise, let's get on to our next adventure here with Julie Desrochers. Julie, how are you?
I'm good, how are you doing?
Good. Now, Julie, you do something very special. What is that?
I do beadwork, more specifically Métis beadwork, and lots of leather work, so involving stitching things like moccasins, mucklucks, things like that.
How did you get started in this?
Well, when I was little, my parents were really involved in what we call reenactment. So if you've been to things, something like Festival, where they're in costume, so lots of that. And so since I was a baby, I've been dressed up and paraded. But at the same time, it's something that's very closely tied to my background, to my culture. So a lot of my sewing skills come from making historic costumes.
Wow.
And then one day I followed a one-day workshop on beadwork with an artist that I really love. His name is Gregory Schofield. And it was an 8-hour day and we learned to bead. And since then I've sort of delved deeper into my background and found my Métis roots and started putting together beadwork and sewing and things like that.
And you've not only just started doing that, you also have your own company.
Yes. So this past spring, my sisters and I decided to take our beadwork to a new level. So it was something that we long practiced together. Eventually, we also started doing lots of workshops and sharing it with others to sort of make sure that it's a skill that stays alive and that more young people get involved in learning about their Métis roots. But then with the pandemic and things starting to slow down with public events, we decided that maybe it was the time to put a company together and start selling beadwork or sharing our art to a more vast network.
Definitely.
So the four of us together put it together. We're called Prairie Owl Beads, and we do a little bit of everything, from jewelry to moccasins to traditional items. So a little bit of everything.
That's great. And why do you keep doing this? Why is this important to you?
I think it's important to me because growing up, I wasn't necessarily in touch with my cultural heritage, but I think that beadwork is a strong connection for me today to my culture. So to show others or to help others connect in that way. So I think passing it on to young people and making sure that they know that this is still alive and that this was such an important part of our people historically, and that it's something that can be incorporated into so many modern things. So really it's to make sure that they know that there's a community doing this and that it's such an important part of our history and that they should use it to stay connected.
That's beautiful. Now, if you've received your package at home, feel free to pull it out. Julie and I are going to go get set up and start the beading together. If you haven't received a package, just even look at the supplies that we're using, and you can definitely reach out to Julie or ourselves at Folklorama, and we can lead you into how you can do it at home as well. So I have my Band-Aids, just in case, because I'm really not a good sewer. Sorry, Mom. And we're gonna get started. Before we get into our special craft, I heard that you were an ambassador general for Folklorama.
That's right.
And when was that, and how was that experience?
It was 2012. It was like one of the best experiences I have ever taken part of. All the opportunities to meet people and share my culture, but also so many opportunities throughout the year to learn about others. So it extended beyond the festival, which was really neat. And yeah, I mean, I made lots of friends. I met lots of people. It was a great networking experience, but just so much culture. So it was right up my alley, exactly what I love to do.
That's great to hear. I heard you were amazing too, so thank you very much for that. So you have received your craft. So explain to us what we have in front of us here.
So what we have right now is a piece of Melton wool. That's what the red piece of fabric is. And on the back you have a piece of what we call interfacing. Okay. All it does is it stiffens your fabric a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to work on. And then on the front you have a piece of paper with a beadwork pattern, which is just a simple 4-petal flower for us right now. And you have a size 10 beading needle,
okay,
which is already threaded, so you should just have to pull it out.
So there's actually different sized needles?
Yes, so needle sizes align with bead sizes.
Okay.
We're just gonna use size 10 beads, which is a very sort of standard size for most beaders. So yeah, the needle and the bead size correspond.
Okay.
But you can go smaller or bigger in
Got
bead
it.
size.
And we have 4 colors that came in our package.
Right, so we have a yellow for the center,
Okay.
a very dark green for our little leafy lines here. And then we have 2 different blues for the petals. So I know a lot of beaders like to shade their petals and make it more realistic looking. So we have that option, or you can pick one blue and roll with it.
Beautiful.
It's totally up to you.
Now we have a dish beside us, so would you recommend people at home getting a plastic dish, like a Tupperware or something?
Yeah, just something to put your beads in so they don't roll around.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a dish. It could be like a blanket, a paper towel, anything that'll sort of cushion beads so they don't go flying.
They don't go flying. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So where do we start?
Where do we start? So we're gonna start with our center of our flower. So we're gonna take our yellow beads and we're gonna put them in our silver dish.
Okay, now all of them or just a couple?
It might be easier to just put all of them
All
for
of them.
now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see they like to roll.
They like to roll, yeah. Even on the silver, they might bounce a little
Okay.
bit, but it's okay.
Awesome.
All right, so your next step is you've already pulled out your needle there. That's
Okay,
perfect.
so all the string, take it off your...
Yes, so you'll unwind.
Okay, unwind all of that. Got it.
Okay, now your thread should be poking up from the bottom of your piece, right? So when I refer to the bottom of our piece, it's the side without the pattern.
Got it.
And the front or the top is the side with the paper.
Okay.
So right now your needle is under, or your thread is underneath. So you're gonna come up as close as you can to the center of the circle of your flower.
So I might have to do it a couple times, right?
That's
Before I
okay.
get the center. I got the center. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, so you're gonna pull your needle all the way through.
Okay.
So I've done a little bit of work for you ahead of time. I already sort of threaded your needle, knotted your
Knotted
thread.
it. Thank you.
That's sort of one of the tricky parts when you're a beginner beater is threading this needle. It's very different from a regular sewing needle. It's very thin. So I've set us up already with that.
Great.
Now, you're gonna pick up a single yellow bead with your needle from your tray.
So I just poke it.
Yep, poke it, let it slide down your needle,
Of course, you're a pro, so the rest of us will catch up.
and then you'll let it slide all the way down to your paper.
It's one of those days where you should have worn the progressives. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Now, sometimes what will happen is because your thread, our thread comes on a spool, your thread might be a little wound tight. So it might knot every once in a while, but you should just have to pull and you're good. Okay. I was a little tangled, so I just thought I'd make that remark. Okay. Now you're gonna go back down with your needle as close as you can to where you came up,
Okay.
but not in the same hole,
Yeah.
and you're not going back through your bead.
Okay.
Otherwise it will fall off.
Not through the bead. Got it. Okay.
There you
Ooh.
go. You have beaded a bead out of probably a few hundred on this flower. It's a
Yay,
big
us.
accomplishment.
Great job, everyone.
Okay, so the next step is you're going to take your needle and you're going to come up from the bottom again.
Okay.
And you want to come up as close as you can to your yellow bead on any side. It doesn't matter.
Really glad the camera's on you for this and not me. Okay. I have a whole bunch
Again,
of
you're going
staff
to
holes.
pull your thread all the way.
Okay.
And this time what we're going to do is pick up 7 beads
Wow.
all at the same time.
And same yellow ones, obviously.
Same yellow ones, that's right.
I keep wanting to touch them with my fingers, but I guess it's easier with...
Everybody's got their own techniques. Some people will pick up beads and put them on their needle. I like to use my needle to pick them
Yeah,
up.
it's so much easier with the needle. Mm-hmm. Never tried that before.
And there's even like different, so we're using a long beading needle, but
Okay.
you can get short beading needles. So they sort of give you different advantages. A long one generally is easier to pick up beads, where a short one, you have more control over where you're stitching
That makes
when you're
sense.
doing the sewing part.
So these flowers, I see them a lot in beading work. Do they mean anything?
So the Métis people are often referred to or known as the flower beadwork people. When you look at historic or older pieces, most Métis beadwork will always be floral. And a lot of it is based on what those people were seeing around them when they were doing this work. Okay. But a lot of patterns are also based on French silk embroidery patterns that were brought over from Europe. Oh. So a lot of flowers, but different nations or different people or different communities, you'll see different types of flowers. So here in southern Manitoba, you'll see lots of 5-petal flowers. It's a very Métis style flower.
Is the 5 mean something, or just a thing that's come over and passed
Not to my knowledge, but it is asymmetrical. So a lot of Métis beadwork will also have that. For example, like if you're looking at a vest, it'll never be exactly the same on both sides.
Okay.
So a 5-petal flower helps in adding that asymmetry to things.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our beads on.
So we have our 7 beads. Now what we're going to do is you're going to go back down the hole you came up. So you're not going back through the beads or anything. We're just passing your needle through that hole and pulling all the way.
Now, if you're just right beside it, is that okay, or does it have to be the exact hole?
If it's right beside, that's okay. Get as close as you can. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a loop.
Oh, okay.
So right now you have a loop of 7 beads that's sort of sticking up from your paper.
Right, yes, so I just push it down. I'll push it back up.
What we're going to do is we're going to push it down over top of that first bead that we put down. So we're creating a circle around that center bead.
Got it. Okay.
Now we need to stitch these beads in place so they don't pop back up. So depending on the style of beadwork you're doing, we'll either stitch down every second bead or we'll stitch down in between every bead. So a lot of Métis beadwork is done every second or third. So what that means is I'm going to come up with my needle from the bottom and I'm going to line it up between 2 beads.
Okay.
Any 2 beads.
Got it.
And once I'm there, I'm going to pull my thread all the way up.
I'm there. Keep going.
And when I say we're stitching down our beads, we're actually stitching the thread that's holding the beads. So we're going to go back down with our needle on the other side of the thread. So in between your row of beads and your center bead.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, totally does.
And then again, you're just going to pull all the way down. And now the trick is we're going to do this all the way around our circle. So you have to try and remember where you started.
That's the key. That's
the trick, yeah. So now we're going to skip the next bead and we're going to go to the next space. And we're going to come up again. Pull all the way.
Does it have to go left or right, or does it matter?
In this case, it doesn't matter because what we're doing is we're beading with a single needle. Now there are multiple styles of beadwork where some artists will bead with 2 needles. And what that means is there's 1 needle that threads beads and 1 needle that stitches beads.
Okay.
So they work independently, and the only advantage to that is it's easier to go back on your work and fix a mistake.
Okay.
I recommend usually if you're a beginner to start with 1 needle to sort of get a handle on what you're doing.
I get confused on which needle goes where.
Yeah, a little bit of experience with a single needle generally helps a lot when you're learning to bead with 2. So how many stitches have you put in there?
I put in 2 so far.
2? Okay. So because we've got 7 beads, if you put in 3, we should be good to go to our next step.
And how often do you make this type of jewelry? Or how often do you bead, I mean?
Yeah. It depends on what else I have going on, but I generally try and do a little bit of beadwork every day.
It's very relaxing.
Yes.
Yeah?
Once you sort of get a handle and a groove going, a lot of people will do it while they're listening to their podcast, or they'll do it watching the TV, or a lot of people find it kind of meditative, because once you've done this, you sort of do the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh,
we just increase or decrease the amount of beads we thread.
Okay.
So
awesome.
once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple. Yeah. Okay, so did we get 3 stitches around?
Yes.
All right. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to come back up any side of our circle, doesn't matter, but as close as our yellow beads as we can.
Okay.
Because we're going to do 1 last row around our center. If your thread does get tangled on the bottom of your work, you don't have to worry about it too much. Depending on what you're doing, often beadwork will be sewn into something, so you often don't see the back. So like right now, I have a little bit of a knot. But I'm not gonna worry about undoing it too much right now because it's not gonna matter later.
Okay. So we do another round of stitches?
So you've come up with your needle, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna pick up more beads.
Woohoo.
So we're gonna do another row.
Okay.
Now, we're gonna start with picking up 15, and I'll show you how to measure to see if that's enough beads.
Okay.
Because every beader will have a different tension in their thread. So for me, I might need 15 to make another circle, but maybe my stitching is tighter than yours, and you might need 20. So we're gonna thread 15, we're gonna measure, and then we'll add or remove as needed.
Okay, so with our needle, 15.
Right.
I'm sure after a while you get really quick at picking them up, right?
Yeah, with a little bit of practice. It also sometimes depends on the surface that you're using. Like I love these little silver trays, but sometimes it can be a little slippery. So that's why I often tell people like a fabric, like a paper towel or a blanket sometimes is a bit easier.
Is a good way to go. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you folks, but I'm losing count, so I have to go back and count the beads to see where I'm at. So what things do you make with your beading?
The most popular things right now I find are jewelry, lots of earrings, bracelets, hair ties, that sort of thing.
Oh, hair ties too.
Mm-hmm. But I myself like to do a lot of leather work, so I'll often do, like I'll bead something and I'll turn it into like a medicine pouch or a pair of moccasins, a bag, hair clips, things like that.
Those were very I noticed Métis beading was very popular for Christmas gifts and holiday gifts this year.
Yes.
Everywhere I saw it, people were like, how can I get it? Well, now you know where you can get it from. You can get it from Julie, the Prairie Owl. Quick plug.
Yeah.
I know, Julie, you're probably done an hour ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, I think I'm almost at 15.
Okay. Once you do get to 15, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the beads around the circle here using my thumb to hold them down to see if I've put enough to come back to where I started. So all we're trying to do is complete a circle.
Okay, so right around the...
All the way around the circle.
Okay.
So I've put 15 and I have quite a bit of space.
Like that?
Yep. It's a bit tricky, yeah. I use my thumb. When I'm holding it, I use my thumb. Or your finger is fine.
Okay.
So it looks like you've got enough beads there.
Okay.
So what I would say for you is now you're going to take your needle and you're going to go back down the same hole you came up.
Okay.
I'm going to pick up a few more to complete my circle. I'm going to say probably 2. So beyond your first middle bead and then your row of 7, after that there's no formula for beadwork. Like I mentioned earlier, every beader will have a different number of beads on the next row. And that's totally normal. It all just depends on the tension of your stitching. And again, we created a big loop, which we're gonna press down if it's popping up, and we're going to stitch again every second bead down. So coming up on the outside of the circle and going down on the inside of that row.
The same thing, like every other bead or every third bead?
Every other bead should be good. You could do every third. The only thing that risks happening if you do every third is you might have some beads that feel a little bit loose. They might pop up a little bit.
Okay.
I know some beaders like to stitch down every single space, so every bead, which will just create like a more consistent, uniform look and a uniform spacing between every bead. But I find that once you add things around, like once you start working on your petals, and you fill things in, every second bead is plenty.
Okay, Julie, so we're getting our circle down. I realize because I'm a beginner, I'm taking probably way too long. You can actually pause the YouTube stream right now if you'd like to try to catch up, or come back at another time and take your time to figure out as we're both learning together. So Julie, what is next?
So now we've completed our center circle. What we're going to do is move on to the petals. The petals are beaded a little bit differently from the circle in that instead of starting in the center, we're going to start with an outline and then we'll work our way in.
Ooh.
So first what we need to do is put these yellow beads away.
Okay.
Or put them aside if you had another tray or another working surface. And we're going to pick either of the blues. So there's no particular blue you need to use, it's just what you prefer.
Okay. So no colors like mean things, it's just whatever's prettier.
For our piece, yes. When you look at beadwork as a whole, oftentimes colors do have a significance or a meaning. Generally, every beadwork pattern has a meaning. Flowers could represent people, past experiences, things that you've been through, those types of things. But for our sake, the colors don't matter.
Is there also a family color with a family heritage?
I think you're thinking more of sashes.
Okay.
Like the Metis Sash, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Métis people adopted it very much as a representation of who they are, where they come from. So colors and patterns will be associated with particular families, or even with particular regions or groups, organizations, that type of thing.
Okay.
Beadwork a little bit less. It's more personal to the person who's either wearing it or to the person who's making it.
Okay. Got it. Do you have favorite colors that you like to use?
I tend to lean a lot towards pinks, but I use a lot of old beads that come out of Europe. So the colors are a little bit different. So it's like matte pinks that are really kind of dark in
That's
color.
pretty.
And I find that every beader sort of leans towards a certain color. So I like a lot of pinks, but I could pick out my sister's beadwork by the colors that are in the flowers.
Wow.
So she often tends to lean towards blues, and it's not like done consciously. It's sort of a just a natural kind of thing.
Preference.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Awesome.
Okay, now that we've got our blue beads ready, we're gonna take our needle and we're gonna come up from the bottom at the very corner of a petal. So the petals meet at the four opposite sides of the circle.
Okay.
So we're gonna pick one, doesn't matter which one. We're gonna come up on the corner, pull all the way.
It happens.
It happens,
Yeah.
tangling happens. Sometimes you have to be a little patient with your thread. There we go. You're gonna pick up 20 beads now.
Whoa.
So what we're doing is we're doing this whole outline.
Okay.
I recommend going with 20. If you wanted to make your petals bigger, you can.
I guess it's practice, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to picking all this up. The beads, not also the craft, but
Yes. That's why I like the longer needle. I find it much quicker to pick them up. Or drop them. Go.
So what's the favorite things that you like to make?
I don't really have a favorite, I would say. Any kind of beadwork I enjoy. I do really like the sewing aspect of it. So turning my projects into something. I think my favorite project to work on, I suppose, would be like moccasins or mucklucks. Because even though it does take quite, there's several hours that go into the project, it's something that still has a fairly quick turnaround time, so you see your project evolve rapidly.
Yeah.
And so I like that feeling of seeing something coming to completion.
Oh, I bet.
Whereas I also have lots of beadwork projects that I've started and I come to every once in a while, but they're not completed. So having that project every once in a while that's easy to get through is kind of nice.
And how old is the youngest person that you've ever taught how to bead?
The youngest person I've ever taught to bead. I've done some beadwork with kids in grade 5 and 6. I believe would be the youngest I've taught to bead. I have done some beadwork that's a little bit different with more bigger beads, like pony beads, like plastic ones,
Yeah.
with kindergarten kids. But we used like plastic darning needles. And that was a really fun project. But it was a little bit different. We were more threading beads to add to a larger beaded piece. So there's a little bit less sewing.
Okay.
Now once you have your beads, you're gonna poke down on the opposite end of the petal. So I started here.
So going down this way?
Yep.
Okay.
At the opposite end, so at a different intersection.
Okay, got it. Intersection, that's a great way to put it.
And now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch these beads down in place, doing our best to follow the line on the pattern. But you have to remember that it is just a pattern, so if you veer off the line, that's okay. It does take practice to get those beads to line up exactly where you want them. One trick that I can recommend is I often use my thumb to sort of keep the beads in place
Okay.
as I come up and down with my needle.
Yeah, that seems to be helping me. Do you do it every second bead again, every third bead?
Yep, I'm gonna do every second bead. You could, if you would wanted, go every single bead. Just remember that will double the amount of time you're spending on your beadwork.
Okay.
So every second, all the way around till you get to the opposite end of the petal again.
So what's the biggest project you've ever worked on?
The biggest project? I've worked on a few different jackets.
Ooh.
So taking like the lapels and the cuffs on a jacket and beading those. I would say those are pretty big projects. I've worked on a few.
I bet those are beautiful.
Thank you. I've also worked on a few framed pieces, larger pieces that ended up being framed for different
gifts
people.
Or, oh, wow.
Yeah. So a few of them have been as gifts, and then a few, like we often will have people come to us and ask, we have this and we would like to add some beadwork to it, and we'll sort of take it and get to know the person and draw something up and then pitch, I think the lapels on this jacket would really look great with this beadwork design, and then we'll go from there.
What a great way to not only honor their heritage, honor your heritage. A beautiful piece that you always have with you.
So we've now finished the outline of that first petal. What we're going to do next is fill it in. So to fill it in, we're going to do the exact same process. So we're going to come up on the inside of our first line, close to our center.
Okay. I was just going to ask you that. This is good. We're catching on.
As close as you can to your center, yep.
Okay.
And we're going to thread this time 15 beads. Now there's no exact math to the number of beads that's going to come next. It really, again, depends on how big your petal ended up, what shape it's turned out to be. So we're going to start with 15. We're going to lay them down and see if they meet our center on the opposite side.
Okay.
If not, we add. If there's too many, we take them off.
Perfect. So as the numbers go, so I know we started on 20 for the first one. Now we're doing
15.
15, thank you.
I generally would go 5 less on a petal because
Okay.
it's a longer strand of beads.
Okay.
Now, the other important thing to remember here with this flower is we chose a simple project with a 4-petal flower because I can outline this petal and fill it in, and then go to the next, outline and fill in. I can work that way all the way around. Whereas with a 5-petal flower, I would have to outline everything first and then work on filling in. Because as you fill in a petal, it'll expand a little bit. And if I outline and fill here, by the time I get to the 5th petal, the 5th one will be smaller than all the others.
Okay.
So you outline first to keep the shape. Here with 4 petals, you have much more space in between them. So filling in last doesn't matter as much. So we're gonna do that now by picking up those 15 beads.
Perfect. And I think we're going to show up on the screen right now the finished product. So take your time as we will on this side going through our different leaves and filling them in each time. But you at home, check out what it looks like when you're done. It's quite exciting. So Julie, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate learning about Métis beading and all the fun times you can have at home. Relaxing it is, if we can say that.
Yes.
And join us next week at Folklorama at Home, the virtual experience. Check us out too on our social media at Folklorama and folklorama.ca on the web. Thanks again. Have a great night.